welcome to the Greater Cincinnati Dems. I'm Katie Hoffman. Alberta Hemsley is in San Diego with her grandchildren. Hopefully she'll be back by next week. Our scheduled speaker, Stephanie Sumero-Dumas, when I called her to find out what her needs were for her presentation, she just said, "I'm not coming." I said, "And when were you going to tell me?" "Well, I just told you." She is our Democratic candidate for Hamilton County Commissioner, running against Chris Monzel. So that made me very concerned. So I'm just leaving it there. Brennan Grayson, I contacted Brennan Grayson from the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center, and he did make a commitment to come. I just received a text message from him. He is unable to come, but see, my job, anybody who wants this job is welcome to it. I get paid so much for this. But he is sending Magda, Manuel, Marley, and Zach, who have worked with the Interfaith Justice Center, and I think this must be them walking in the door.
All right.
Okay. Come up front. Yes, yes. There we go. Way. Okay. And so I'm very excited that they are here. I don't know if you are experiencing what I have been experiencing the past week, past 2 weeks. I'm almost afraid to turn on the news. I'm almost afraid to look at my social media. I am sick to my stomach every single time I watch. As Sue Magnan just said to me, the incredible capacity of human beings for evil. I just can barely stand it. And Elizabeth Warren, she's on top of things. She sent out an email yesterday saying, "Folks, the fight has only just begun. You can't give up." Several years ago, I took a course at Hebrew College on Holocaust studies, and I never ever understood why so many Germans and so many Europeans looked the other way. I'm kind of starting to understand a bit, because there's only so much evil, there's only so much hate that you can stand. You almost want to put yourself in a cocoon where you feel safe, where you don't have to know these things are going on. But we have to fight, because if we don't fight, atrocities will take place. So as our folks are organizing back there for telling us about the work that they're doing, I know we have announcements, and so if you have announcements, I would be happy to. And Mike is going to be responsible for this mic. Mike on the mic.
There's a program tonight about hate at the Jewish Community Center. Maybe you all know already. It's 7 o'clock. It's called United Against Hate. It's Ridge Road at Cross County Highway. I don't call it the Reagan Highway. United Against Hate, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, it's actually going to be an amazing program. It's a former white supremacist who changed his stripes.
I'm Susan Levy, and I'm having a fundraiser for AFTAB on June 27th from 5 to 7. I put some invitation out on the table, but if you want your personal one, I can get it to you. Thank you.
Speaking of AFTAB, I've been asked to invite people to march in the Pride March with him. It's June 23rd, 10 a.m. For those who are interested, events.mobilizeamerica.io/AFTAB for Ohio event 2568. And I will put that in the newsletter. Thanks so much.
It's at the church on 7th Street. That's where he's gathering.
I have a question about whether this group could appeal to City Council to pass a resolution against what's going on with the separation of families. And my silly question is, why couldn't we get at least a separate bill that simply says, the Congress says they're not going to separate families? I think that might pass without putting it together with all the rest of the immigration stuff.
Will the president sign it is the question. Yeah, so,
Not even getting 2/3 over.
well, who knows? That's a great idea. That is a great idea.
There's an effort to, I think it came out of the Steve Drehouse's efforts to help people understand the contributions that immigrants make to the country. And at the Freedom Center tomorrow night, we have a large Bhutanese population here, and I'm personally curious about their stories. And they are, there's an event tomorrow night at the Freedom Center, I think it's at 6:30, but I'm not positive about the time, about, the Bhutanese are coming in and telling their stories of how they got here and their stories of survival. And I think stories of survival are uplifting. And I just came from Montgomery, Alabama, and saw the Peace and Justice memorial to the lynchings, the people that have been lynched in this country. And I know a lot of people look at it as, I don't want to get more depressed. But the truth is, if we don't own our history, if we keep our heads buried in the sand, the truth never comes out, and we never face the truth. And we have a continuation of that mentality into the modern era. It has never ended. The mentality is there's evil, and you know what it looks like because it always has dark skin. First of all, it's African. And I mean, this is the mentality that we as a country have accepted, that people of African descent are innately inferior and dangerous. And we still, that still exists. That's why we have so many African Americans in jail now. It's the most successful propaganda campaign that the country has ever experienced. And you go down there and you see how it started with slavery, it evolved into Jim Crow, and now we have this ridiculous number of people imprisoned. It's a continuation, and we have to address it. But that's just my, spiel, because I just came from there and I'm into it. Yeah, but if you ever are in Montgomery, I really highly recommend it. You don't even, if you're ever near Montgomery, it's worth an extra day to go there.
I think the Southern Poverty Law Center put that memorial up. Don't forget.
No, Brian Stevenson. It's a privately.
Oh, private.
It's all private. Brian Stevenson, who has spent his career defending people on death row, and Brian Stevenson wrote a book called Just Mercy. He spent his whole life dedicated to uncovering the injustice of our criminal justice system.
I just found a wonderful video about Pete Seeger. It was on PBS. I got it at the library. What an awesome man. There ought to be statues of him all over the country. I had no idea how much he had done. You can get, maybe you can get it somewhere. PBS did it. It's called America Sings or something like that. I had no idea what an awesome man he was.
He deserves a posthumous Nobel Prize, actually. Any more?
I would like to put an addendum on the prison system in the United States. I just found out that the alien immigrants that's redundant, but the illegally prosecuted aliens are being put in prison and they are privately funded. These are private corporations. I don't know how much you are aware of it, but I'll make you aware of it
Yeah,
now.
which Jeff Sessions has a controlling interest financially.
You want to add that?
Yes. To add to what Laura just said, Jeff Sessions has a financial controlling interest in the private prisons.
Katie, you mentioned Elizabeth Warren, and it just brings up for me, I used to get emails from her every single day, but during the Bernie Hillary debates and all, her going completely over to a right wing, in my opinion, a right wing Democrat running for office. Finished, I said no more, never will I see an email from her again on my, and I mean, we have this fight, of course, now with the Democratic National Committee. They're extremely slow to make all the changes we need in the way we do primaries, in the way we do our conventions, in the kind of people we want to have running, the progressive people that may have a very good chance now, but they're only half behind them. We gotta, I mean, one of the main things we have to do is try to be the kind of Democrats that do have a chance who can run for what people actually want. There's almost no platform now. So, I mean, I think people in this group know we have that kind of struggle. We've got to have Democrats who know what's going on with common people, so they will maybe come out and vote for us.
Just tagging on to what Laura said about the immigrants, I understand from my JPC and the Immigrant Dignity Coalition that there is a minimum of 34,000 beds that need to be filled for detention in these private detention centers. 34,000 beds a night, taxpayer paid.
I just had just a thought. I was here a couple weeks ago, very impressed. Oh, sorry, here. Our strength is in the people that are sitting here, and our weakness is what Mr. Greenhouse said last week, and that's 2 weeks ago, and that the Democratic Party makes up so many different groups that it's very difficult to organize them into one central voice. You know, I think one of the things we have to look at is not necessarily speaking to the fellow Democrats, but to speak to the people that aren't. And I think one of the things you have to start with first is education. Everything that was said here is absolutely, we understand that, we know that. But, you know, being a home care nurse, I go into people's homes that are on the other side, and they are totally clueless. They believe whatever they're told. I don't know if anybody here is connected with the newspapers or the media, but I think the first place we have to start is education. And if someone in, let's say, the Enquirer would write an article, the big issue now is immigration. So let's do a history of immigration, a week long, and it's Pulitzer Prize stuff if they do it well. But once you educate the people, then you can start telling them what you represent and how you can make the world a better place. But I think we have to start with the papers and educate the populace, because if we don't do that, he who shall remain nameless is going to stay in power.
Should we go to our speakers, or should we?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to Paul Breidenbach. He's one of our very own. He is with the AFL-CIO, and his main task with the AFL-CIO is to work with the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center. And we have 4 representatives from the Interfaith Workers Center, and so I'm turning this over to Paul.
Thanks a lot. Sorry we were late. We threw this panel together rather hurriedly. Our executive director, Brendan Grayson, announced not too long ago that he wasn't going to be able to make it, but so the staff will be able to present. So to my right is Magda Orlando. She's the communication director. Marley Monsalve is a member who suffered a workplace injury and was made whole more or less by a Worker Center intervention and has been a volunteer ever since. Zach Ortiz is a senior at Xavier and an intern for the summer, and Manuel Perez is the lead organizer for the Worker Center. So there are three staffers: the executive director, Brendan Grayson, Manuel Perez, and Magda. So I'm going to turn it over to Magda. She'll give you a brief overview of the mission and history of the Worker Center, and then several of us will have very brief presentations about the 3 or 4, depending how you count them, priorities of the Worker Center, and then we'll have time for questions, which I'm sure we'll be a lot of. Magda?
No, it's not up. So first off, thank you all so much for having us here. Really excited to be here, and I was really excited to hear all of your thoughts and interventions earlier with some of the comments that was coming from the crowd. So it's good energy. I'm really feeling this room. I'm really excited to get to talk to you about what I love to do and what is my life at the moment, working at the Worker Center. So Worker centers are places, and there's a bunch of them in this country. They've existed since about the 80s, where essentially immigrants and other low-wage workers can come together to stand up for their rights on the job when they don't have union representation or when it's hard to access legal services, right? So the Worker Center here was founded in 2005. When the local civic leaders and faith leaders were really kind of starting to realize that they were getting overwhelmed with work-related complaints from low-wage workers, at-risk workers, a lot of immigrant workers, the growing immigrant community here. So the Worker Center was founded as a community resource for people to be able to get the help that they need, get educated about their rights, and to be able to confront power on the job when their wages are being stolen or when they're experiencing safety issues and injuries at work. To this date, we're most known for fighting wage theft. It is very, very common, actually. It's surprisingly common almost to some people, how much people lose in wages that they're actually legally owed by their employers. It happens mostly it can happen in any industry, but it happens mostly in low-wage industries, so really the people who cannot afford to be out that paycheck. And over the past 13 years, the Worker Center has helped recover over $3.5 million in unpaid wages for workers. And I want to say, that number, it's pretty amazing, it's pretty huge, especially for a small organization like ours. And a lot of that is only possible because of the support in the community that we get in working together with other groups, with faith organizations, with the government enforcement agencies, with lawyers, volunteer lawyers who lend their service and their time, and just people like you here who support our organization. But I also want to say, the estimated amount of wages stolen every year in the city is $52 million. Wow. So next to $52 million a year, $3.5 million over 13 years, it seems like a drop in the bucket, right? Which is why, we don't just want to intervene after the fact, but we really want to help advocate and educate people on these issues and to move real change to help prevent this from happening and to better people's lives and their dignity on the job. So one of the other numbers that we don't talk about as much is that in helping people recover their wages and stand up for their rights on the job, that has actually led to a lot of people moving into better paying work, moving into union work, being able to actually get what they're owed, raises across the shop floor on the job. So over the past 13 years, we've also helped increase wages by an estimated $6.8 million, which is a huge win, and it's even more than the recovered wages, because we know that we don't just want to react, we want to be proactive about actually not just having like the basic minimum, but having actual dignity on the job. So with that, I want to start talking about three kind of main areas of focus. Manuel, do you want to lead us up into that?
Thank you again. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manuel Perez from I'm an immigrant from Guatemala, living here in Cincinnati for 12 years. In my role at the organization is a membership coordinator, but for us at the Workers Center, health and safety at the workplace is a part of our culture. We know how important is one of the most important rights for workers, have health and safety condition at the workplace. And opened my mind when I came to the center with the Western situation, and also working in construction and restaurant industry, see how problems happen everywhere. And one of them is health and safety. But who opened my heart and my mind is when I saw the most percent the accident and fatalities happen with the immigrants. But about all immigrants happen more with the Latino community. And I don't like my community part of the statistics. And this is the reason for us it's very important educate our workers to prevent accidents. And part of the history at the Workers Center is a group of 10 workers who work in construction, attend a training in University of Chicago. And, but when they return, the more important what they learning is spread with the community. And they, during this time, they train no less than 200 construction workers. It's the first time we have a health and safety training in Spanish. And it's something we do and continue promoting. And like Magda mentioned, just kind of the example is when someone came or called about situation happen at the workplace. We don't have enough resources, money and people to attend every case. But what we are able to do, and sometimes I hear in the back, how important is educate. When you educate someone, this make a difference. And before we provide a service, is they came and we provide worker rights training, talking about minimum wage, no discrimination, OSHA rights, family or medical leave back. And when we finish, we ask him, do you think when you know this information before the situation bring you here, probably make a difference? And they say yes. When we know what our rights are, it's easier to speak up and fight for our rights. And it's what we want, not just providing services. Services is good, but create dependency in people. And we don't want this, we want to improve people's life. And one of the things we do at the community, not just at the center, is visiting neighborhood churches and provide basic rights training or health and safety training, just to teach people when they're working, identify what kind of hazard around them to prevent accidents. And also in the same area is unfortunately situations happen, you know, it's accident is something happen in seconds. And as people came to with cases when the workers' compensation cases. They working and have an accident, but they don't have too much information where they go and lead with all this bureaucratic situation. And it's part of what we do too, trying to educate them and also trying to find legal assistance for them, to have opportunity to talk to a lawyer to take care about them, what they do. And basically what we do.
So yeah, the safety, Safety Now for All is what we call our safety and health campaign, because we focus our work in mainly three areas, three campaigns. So Manuel was just talking about the Safety Net for All campaign, and a lot of that is based on education, and educating workers so that they can stand up for their rights on the job to a safe workplace, identify the hazards, and prevent injury from happening, and to keep themselves as well as their coworkers safe, right? Because safety happens in numbers, you know. So that's like the middle logo and the little poster over there, if you can see it. The other two campaign areas that we focus on is what we call Just Pay Cincy and then Immigrant Dignity. So Just Pay Cincy is our, thank you, Zach. I gotta love this intern. He's great. He's great. He's wonderful.
Is it a health and safety violation?
That's a health and safety violation.
Well, you know, I'm pretty sure, I don't know.
It is.
Maybe we can try to.
OSHA 30.
There you go. Engineering control. So Just Pay Cincy is our oldest campaign. Like I was talking about earlier, we're most known for confronting wage theft. And that's what we do under the banner of Just Pay. Our main service that we provide is we run a hotline. Workers can call the hotline. It's our office number, 621-5991. Anybody can call, and we can respond to it in 6 different languages between all of us at the office. And it's one of the few places that is a fully multilingual that people can call and actually speak to somebody in their own language, which really helps to kind of build confidence and trust. But yeah, people can call the hotline and ask all kinds of questions. And if they have a case, then we run our little mini legal clinic for workplace complaints. What Manuel was mentioning earlier was that we do a training every time that there's a new case we take, because this might be a free legal service, but instead of paying us with money, we want to make sure that you leave this place empowered for the future situations and for your case to bring it forward and to fight for yourself in this case right now. But what's also part of that, like I was saying earlier, $52 million a year, you need to do more than just react when that's happening at that scale. So the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center was part of writing and passing the first local wage theft ordinance in Ohio 2 years ago now. And it's called a wage enforcement ordinance, or the Just Pay Cincy ordinance, and how the city uses tax abatements to fund a lot of the development. Well, those tax abatements are discretionary. So now, through this ordinance, there's another tool that the city has to deter people from stealing wages in construction on these developments. And we're starting to see some results with that now. The first complaint was filed under the ordinance officially in October, and the city's really kind of been committed to enforcing this. Now, we also know that this is one industry. It happens in so many different industries. So our current policy initiative that we're working on is called the Good Food Purchasing Program. And the Good Food Purchasing Program, essentially what it does is it ties institutional purchasing to values that respect the environment, that respect workers' rights, that respect animal welfare. Local economies are prioritized, and then nutrition, because we want, this is public money. So we want the schools, for example, the schools buy more meals every day, serve more meals every day than all of the restaurants in Cincinnati put together. That is a lot of dollars. Talk about consumer power, right? So we've been working with the school board and with the food services director to pass a policy that has been very effective and successful in other parts of the country, such as LA and Chicago. Chicago actually recently, the whole county, Cook County, passed a good food purchasing policy to tie the institutional contracts to not only respecting the basic legal situation, which in many cases, because there's just no transparency in the food supply chain, a lot of companies are violating the law, and they're still getting our tax dollars, But we don't even know it because there's just no transparency in the food chain. So what it does is it makes people accountable, and it raises the bar, and it raises those standards, and it opens up the opportunity for good producers, for ethical producers, to actually have a seat at the table and to be able to compete for these institutional contracts. So that is our current policy. I mean, a lot of workers that we see, some of our members even, are folks who work in food processing. There's a lot of immigrants working in food processing. Food processing is one of the highest injury rates in terms of jobs. So for us, what's really important about this policy, like, yeah, we love the environment, we love animals, it's all great, but we really care about these workers, and people really forget about the farm workers, the folks in the factories, the folks who do it in the packing plants. And so this is our way of really tying it all together and working together with broad coalitions of groups to make sure that these workers are respected and have dignity at work. So those are some aspects of the Just Pay. And then our third campaign arm is the Immigrant Dignity campaign that we have, working closely as a funding member of the Immigrant Dignity Coalition with the IGPC in this community. Manuel, do you want to talk a little more about that?
Yeah, so Immigrant Dignity is a broad coalition of at least 30 organizations, most of which don't have members who are immigrants. So the Workers Center is one of the few organizations among them that does have immigrant members. And our priority is to ask the immigrants themselves what it is that they want. So that when, in the wake of the election, Amos decided that there would be a sanctuary city movement, our question was, is this what the immigrants want? The sanctuary ends up becoming a target. And in the event, the city administration decided for everybody by declaring Cincinnati a sanctuary city, for which we're grateful. But you know, current conditions include now possible workplace raids. So I don't know if you remember the last major workplace raid in Cincinnati took place in Westchester in 2007 at Cook Foods. And it was a disaster, and I think it was under Bush. And as a result of that kind of social disaster that ensued, I mean, children got off the buses and there were no parents to meet them. There were just all kinds of problems that were caused by that, and it was seen as inhumane, and they stopped doing it, and obviously then Obama stopped using workplace raids and prioritized what he considered dangerous criminals. We now face a situation in which workplace raids are a strong possibility. We just saw it happen up in northern Ohio. And we're waiting for it to happen here, and while we're waiting, we are reaching out to immigrant groups and suggesting to them that while keeping a low profile is a useful thing, which is what very commonly they do, it's best to be organized, it's best to be ready, it's best to have funds. So at a meeting last week, we had an immigrant member who wanted to start a bond fund because she says, well, we're all working and we can afford to pay into a fund knowing that it goes to bond, and that once the litigation is complete, the money comes back and can be used by somebody else. So our notion is that workers themselves, immigrants themselves, in order to do the best they can under the circumstances and under their limited options, need to get together in either geographic groups or church groups and get trained on their rights. Okay? So for instance, in the state of Ohio, an immigrant who is stopped, anybody who is stopped by a police officer legally has to give name, address, and date of birth. Those 3 bits of information, and that's it. After that, a person is perfectly legally able to ask if he or she is free to go. And to say, I do not wish to answer any more questions. With regard to immigration, a person does not have to say anything. Citizens don't have to answer questions from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. No one has to answer questions. If Immigration and Customs Enforcement knocks on a door, we advise immigrants not to open the door. We used to say, if there's a warrant signed by a judge, then yes, you do have to open the door. But the notion of, opening the door to get the warrant to take a look, and to see if it's signed, how would they tell? We're advised that if there is a warrant signed by a judge, then they don't have to knock on the door. They can knock the door down. So, and there have been cases in which people have opened the door to see what's going on, and that's considered an invitation. So it's important to get that message out to folks, to immigrants who don't speak the language. In many cases, their first language isn't even Spanish. It's Mam or some other Mayan language. Get them information about the way the legal system works here, and get them looking out for each other, so that, for instance, in Springdale recently, there have been several small raids where ICE is in the parking lot of an apartment complex and stops a car full of immigrants and just takes everybody in. If you know that there's this ICE car in your parking lot, there should be a network to inform each other and to stay inside for now. Don't go out while ICE is here. So those are the kinds of things that this sort of crisis mode that we're thinking about with regard to the Immigrant Dignity Coalition.
Do you want to?
The reason I asking Paul is we're working together at the community, and people know in the community, Paul. And it's important to mention, when we talk about immigrants, we don't talk about just Latinos. We have immigrants for all world. And the other thing we understand is, for example, tomorrow immigration reform happen, but this don't change the dynamic between worker and employer, and it's important to talk. It don't matter you citizen tomorrow, but the dynamic of the workplace continue, and this is the reason it's very today clear. Is when the immigration reform happen, we stop. It's not true. We continue. This dynamic and abuses unfortunately happen, and it's very important. The other thing for us, like Magda mentioned, is we understand how important is faith community, how important is labor, how important other groups of the community. And when we together, of course, we more strong, and not just a slogan. It's the truth. We want this kind of connection, and we have support from this organization. And something we learned in fighting for immigration reform is unfortunately nothing happened a few years ago, and we think probably immigration reform came, but unfortunately never called to the Congress to read the bill, for example. But we're learning something. Probably now we don't available to change at the national level, but we are available to do things at community laws. And one of them is a few years ago, the mayor called for immigration task force. As many organizations at the community came and shared ideas. And we take advantage, and we are labor groups introduce immigrant rights of bill, and we introduce two things: the Western Ordinance and also the municipal ID. And I don't know everyone is familiar with the MARC ID at the community. It's basically we're struggling when police stopping immigrants. They show the matricular ID, something from our country, so passport, but sometimes they don't accept. And we are asking at the community, what do you think we do to resolve this problem? And they mention municipal ID. And that's the reason we have this municipal ID. Don't came direct from the city, but we are organization, one of the organizations who represent the community, immigrant community in general, is MARC, the Metropolitan Religious Coalition, and this is the reason the name of the card. Is we are organization fighting for workers and immigrant rights, try to use this card a tool to organize community. And for us, our next fight is fight for a driver license. We know when we're talking about detention center, is many of people who is detained is about don't have driver license and move from one place to other to work, to buy food, to go to take kids to the school. You need a transportation. and move to one place to other is a human right, and we need this happen, and we motivating immigrant community to fight for driver license. And one of the good things happened too is a conversation with the Cincinnati Police Department. They changed the policy to mention they accept the matricular ID and also passport, and also they create area in person in charge to communicate with the immigrant community as immigrant liaison. And this is working very well. And you see how important is police have communication close with the community. I know many times at the community in churches or in other places when the kids or immigrant community approach to police and they feel secure and also they feel a friend is very important for us. There's of course many things to do, but this motivates us to continue fighting. We hope in the future, not just here, in other cities around, they accept this mark ID, and probably when time came, fighting for the driver's license.
And one of our current fights locally, like Manuel was pointing out, getting to immigration reform on the federal level is a huge project, but there are things that we can do locally to keep our brothers and sisters safe. And one of the things that is happening right here, right now, over at the jail, is that the sheriff and his whole force of people are collaborating with ICE. They are actively putting any immigrant person who goes into that jail for whatever reason, without them being processed, without there being any kind of verdict judgment, not even a charge, and putting them on the phone with immigration agents who will take whatever information they can in order to issue a warrant, and then, or a detainer. And so Sheriff Neal is actively enforcing immigration law, is respecting detainers that really have no hold legally over criminal enforcement, which is the area that he's active in. And Sheriff Neal, he's one of us, purportedly. He's a Democrat. A year ago, the mayor stood and signed into being the sanctuary city policy, and everybody was standing behind him, including the commissioners who handled the budget for the sheriff. And right here, right now, under all of our noses, the sheriff is actively deporting people. So we need to hold him accountable.
Who does the sheriff report to?
I believe it's the commissioners. Because it's a county.
He's an elected official, he's independent, really. But he has the county prosecutor as a lawyer, just, which makes it hard for him to get independent legal advice.
Can you repeat that so everyone can hear it with the mic?
The sheriff is.
The mic that come out.
You gotta put it close. The sheriff is an elected official, and he's independent. He doesn't report to anyone except the voters. But his lawyer in the nature of things is the county prosecutor. And he has, the sheriff, it's difficult for the sheriff, I think, to get independent legal advice. He doesn't have to do what the prosecutor tells him to do, but it's the easiest thing to do.
Well, we also know that the sheriff is always asking for more money from the commissioners because they are who handle his budget. And he's asking for money because of overcrowded jail cells. Why is he asking for more money if he is not releasing people? He is detaining people without a reason and then not refusing to release people on bond after they pay. And this isn't just happening to immigrants that he's holding for ICE after they post bond, but it is happening to American citizens too, as we recently heard. So this is a problem.
I was thinking we might turn to questions. I don't know if either Zach or Marley wanted to say something. I do want to say that Marley, as a volunteer, very often caters our events at the Workers Center. and is very insistent upon good ingredients, good food. She's sort of amazed by and distressed by the food system we have here and the amount of junk we eat. So she may have brought her cards if you're interested in Colombian cuisine for an event.
Manuel, I heard that you went to Xavier University, and I was wondering if you knew anything about the case of Bernard Pastor, who was a Guatemalan. He went to Reading High School and was arrested up in Butler County, of course, and now he's a dreamer. Have you heard anything about that case?
Actually, Zach goes to Xavier. Well,
Oh, Manuel doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry.
he knows all about the case, I think.
Oh,
I know about the case.
do you know where he is now?
I really know. But the reason I take my attention, the Bernard Pastor case, is his family is from Guatemala. I'm from Guatemala.
Right.
And also is one of the symbolic cases happen and is leading for aim of the campaign to release them. And like many other cases, but
Yeah, I live in Reading, and Amos was very much involved in that case.
exactly.
And I was happy to find out that he is a dreamer. Now, the one question I wanted to ask you, do you feel comfortable in telling us about your history, your immigration history?
Yeah. It's okay. I came to United States 12 years ago, and the reason I came is like the other immigrants, better opportunities for your family and for us. And it's no me or people who came now. When we see the history of this country, it's the same thing happen. And it's something happen in the future. It's a human nature looking for better opportunities. And I experienced two situations like an immigrant. With document and without document. But something I like about the center is teach me, don't matter if you don't have document, you have rights. It's you a human person, right? You know, and it is the thing when we talking about ID. People, for example, showing the matricular ID as an official document or passport, and you show the police and he don't want. But what happened? What do you want? I show you my ADN. No, it's me, it's the picture. It is the things we are struggling. And it's my own motivation, like an immigrant and a person who was working before a staff of the Workers Center, working at a restaurant. I know how good things and bad things happen in places. I know what we need, like workers and immigrants, and it's my own motivation. Something sad to share is unfortunately, 4 years ago, my parents passed away. It's basically in the same week. They are struggling with health and unfortunately passed away. And I remind last night talking with my son, he lives in Nicaragua. We know it's important work. I consider me an interfaith person. I respect all faiths. In the faith they teach me about work is when you want to eat, you want to work, is what they teach me. But then what they teach me don't say, oh, you need show document to work. When I try to work, is try to find the rules they teach me. And it's the same thing happen, and it's kind of conversation with my son. He opened his mind, and in the future, I told him, when you want to migrate, just go discover the world. But something I don't recommend you is go before you have your own family. It's very hard. But as I mentioned, it's my own motivation. My parents, they always teach me fight. And it's what I try to do at the organization. And it's no, to me, working at the center, of course, it's a work, they pay me for what I do. But it's not just for money, it's a passion. And when we do things for passion, I think we change the life. And just about a little my background is I was working in my country like a teacher. I know the public and private sector, and also the last 2 years before we moved in, I was a principal in a public school. And I know the community here. My mama, she was from San Marcos. The big Guatemalan community here is from San Marcos. And it's the other motivation to fight. I know I live in San Marcos for a year when I kid, and every year I spend 2 months of my life with the community, and I know what the community over there and what the community needs here. It's something little bit about me.
Thank you.
Would you please repeat the name of your organization and give your contact information? Let us know if you have a Facebook group and any kind of information like that, please.
Yes, so we're the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center, or in Spanish, the Centro de Trabajadores de Cincinnati. You can find us on Facebook as the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center. Our phone number is 513-621-5991. Sorry.
That's 621.
5991. 621.
5991.
Slower, Paul. We have a bunch of materials actually that we brought with us. I have my card here and I can leave some in the back too if you want to find the email address, or it's info@cworkers.org. And we have some of our flyers in the back, our wage theft book. We brought a bunch of copies because we have a book that we compiled from a lot of the stories really of the Worker Center and the people who brought their cases forward and had the courage to stand up and fight. So that's a collection of those stories. We've got some buttons, got a phone number on that. And what else did we bring? And I think some copies of our newsletter, of the latest edition of that. So yeah, and we're always happy to field calls and you know.
Wait a minute, somebody's got the mic over here.
Sorry, real quick, if you look around the room, none of us look Native American. So at some point in time, our ancestors were all immigrants. But I have a question, is how do they steal wages? I mean, how do people not get paid? I've never experienced that.
That is a really good question. I'm really glad you asked. I'll give like a brief run because there are so many ways in which it happens, right? So some of the most common things that we see is workers not, being asked to work off the clock so that you end up working for less than minimum wage if you add up all the hours. Other things that happen is just people not paying at all. This happens and just paychecks don't come. Last paycheck doesn't come after you leave a job or you lose a job. A lot of people experience what we know as misclassification. So their employer will basically say, well, you're a contractor, so I'm going to pay you as a contractor. And that is a very, very common form of wage theft, especially in construction, because these folks aren't actually contractors, they're workers, but you have to pay a lot higher taxes on your contractor. You don't have a minimum wage as a contractor because only workers have. So we know that our protections mostly come from being employees, workers, as opposed to contractors or managers, right? A lot of that falls away, and bosses use this to take advantage of workers, to pay them less than minimum wage. One big thing that happens too is, if you're working overtime, you're entitled to time and a half, right? Any hour over 40 hours a week is time and a half. Well, a lot of places don't pay their workers time and a half for overtime. And a lot of workers don't even know that that is a right that they have. I mean, sometimes this is why the training is so important that we do. Some people don't even know that there is a minimum wage. But once they learn that, they are in a position to be empowered to speak up and to demand more, because they deserve more. That's the law of this country, and that's just the basic dignity of work. So but I'm really glad you asked the question. There's so many different ways it happens, really, and there's a lot of resources online. We have a video on YouTube from our Just Pay campaign that kind of goes through some of those things. I don't know if you wanted to add something on it.
give two examples about what happened with Chef. Thank you to someone in the audience here. One of the Latino workers from Cincinnati got to work after Sunday in New York. He paid gas, food, and all expenses. But when the time to recover his money, nobody take care about him. And it's this kind of cases involve different states. He living here, work in New York, and the company Cable Vision is another state. It's this kind of hard thing. But fortunately, with the help of the lawyer here, is we recover half amount. This is one of the examples happened with Western. The other situation happened personally with my older brother and I. We work in remodeling a place for fast food restaurant, and when time came, working 2 weeks, they give us a check. When we went to the bank, there's no money. This happened. In many ways. But like Magda mentioned, we try to educating workers about how important they know their rights and find help to do things.
I just want to say briefly, I'm sorry that I have to duck out early. I have an appointment at Peasley. And I know it's near time, I imagine that they'll be able to stay and answer a few questions. I did want to say, though, that on the 29th, there's a plan for some kind of national action against the blackmail policy, the kidnapping of children policy, the we will torture your children until you give us the wall policy that I saw. I guess it's semi-clandestine, but I saw it on alt DHS or alt ICE, one of those alt Facebook accounts. So I don't know exactly what the details are. I will also say there is a local activist, Nancy Sullivan, who is connected to Transformation CDC, who has been doing some monitoring of the ICE office in Blue Ash. She's taken photographs of cars. She wants her immigrant clients, people that she works with, to know, what cars those folks are driving. And I think it's not something the Workers Center has the staff to do, to go to ICE, but it's really sort of a rogue agency in an illegitimate administration, and they're issuing orders that will leave people liable to Nuremberg charges. And we as citizens probably cannot just say, well, that's the law.
Are ICE cars labeled? They're not.
No, sometimes they are, but they drive unmarked cars quite a bit. So if you look at Transformations CDC, you'll get some information about that campaign. She's also had an ice cream social outside the office, and she welcomes. She'll do it again. She welcomes participation in that.
This might be slightly off, but are any who live in the city who'd like to vote on public money for the soccer stadium? We're trying to get it on the ballot, and there's signatures you can sign over here to get on the ballot.
Yes.
I've been wondering why we can't do something about the gangs who are tormenting people and driving desperate people to America and whatever. Couldn't we be doing something to knock out those gangs or buy them off or something?
It's a good question, and I certainly am not in the realm of being able to even try to answer that question. I did want to, if that's okay, just give our member an opportunity to speak. So opening the floor for her to say a couple words. And also people were interested in finding out more. So this is Marley Monsalve, everybody.
Okay. Pienso, my English es una tragedia. Lo siento mucho, por favor.
My English is a tragedy. I'm very, very sorry.
Ok, me queda contarles o recordarles mejor que el trabajo que hace el Centro de Trabajadores es absolutamente en pro de las comunidades, de todos.
I wanted to let you know, or rather remind you of how incredibly important the work of the Workers Center is for the communities here.
Acerca de los programas, todos son importantes. El apoyo que hacen a los empleados, a los trabajadores, es realmente increíble.
All of the programs are really, really important, and the kind of support that the center gives to workers is just incredible.
Inclusive puedo contarles mi propia experiencia en un trabajo que hice aquí en Cincinnati.
I can tell you about my own experience working here in Cincinnati.
Perdón, no fue en Cincinnati, fue en Kentucky.
Sorry, it wasn't in Cincinnati, it was in Kentucky.
Haciendo un trabajo, la supervisora me presionó que debía continuarlo y yo le dije, estoy cansada, no puedo continuar.
So I was working and the supervisor kept pushing me to keep working, and I told my supervisor, I can't, I'm tired, I can't keep doing this.
Y ella me dijo, ¿lo hace o va para la casa? You do or go home. Ok, finalmente me hicieron cirugía en mis manos.
At the end of it all, I had to get surgery on my hands.
Y bueno, el centro de trabajadores fue quien me dio la mano y nos ayuda a todos los trabajadores que estamos siendo presionados en distintos temas, también en el robo de salario, que es muy común, y otros temas.
And so the Workers Center was the place that really gave me a hand, and that supports a lot of our workers, especially when it comes to things as wage theft, but also a lot of other things that happen to workers.
Muchas gracias
Thank you
por
very
estar
much.
aquí, por estar con ustedes, por abrir las puertas para nosotros. Y
Thank you very much for being here with us and for opening your doors to us.
Bueno, feliz día, el final de lo que queda del día. Adiós. Gracias.
And thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
I would like to know whether any of the women or men are experiencing sexual pressure from their employers and whether they're being forced to do sexual favors in order to get their paychecks or other issues.
Magda mentioned.
Sí, sucede también, pero es menos frecuente. Menos.
Yes, it happens, but it's not quite as frequent.
En cualquier trabajo realmente es menos frecuente. Yo puedo confirmarlo porque participando en 40 horas, trabajando 40 horas a la semana, es fácil notar que el tema no es muy frecuente realmente.
For me, working 40 hours a week, I can really attest to the fact that it wasn't something that I had to deal with frequently, that I've seen in the community very frequently. I also want to just say, I mean,
As an example, Magda mentioned a video about our Just Pay campaign. When you go to our website, it's a video, and one of the person who shared the story suffered what you're asking. It's happened years ago. But what we do and what we did with this situation, we receive a call from person who feel harassed or discriminate. What we do is try to make a person comfortable to talk, and probably what we do is sometimes, many times, immigrants feel fear or scared to go to the federal buildings. What we do is open our space to lawyers or staff from the government agencies came and have a conversation with them. Is what we do with these kind of cases.
and of course, we found ourselves in this watershed moment this year, but this kind of work, anti-sexual harassment and sexual exploitation on the job, has been going on in low-wage communities for many years. This problem has been a problem in the low-wage communities for many years that nobody really wants to talk about, because these are the forgotten women and the forgotten people of this country, are these low-wage workers. And one of the things that we like to frame it as for our center is that it's part of your right to a safe and healthy workplace to not have to deal with harassment. This is not an extra tack-on side issue. Harassment and discrimination is part of what makes your workplace less safe, and you are entitled to a safe workspace. So in our trainings, this is something that we also talk about. And a lot of our allies around the country with other worker centers, like for instance, the Coalition for Immokalee Workers, and some of the other worker centers that we're in community with, are really breaking into ways, and the Coalition of Immokalee Workers really does this very, very well with their program, and the way that they do it is talking about it openly and confronting that, right? Acknowledging the fact that the racist, sexist, patriarchy, part of all this whole machine of exploitation under capital looks different for all of us, but is all tied together. So fighting for justice on the job means also fighting against this discrimination. It means fighting against sexual violence on the job. And so having a very open conversation about it. And then really, people need to feel empowered to be able to speak up, right? So that's why, as Manuel was saying, like, they can come to us. They don't have to go to intimidating government agencies. They can speak directly in their language, and they can feel more comfortable coming forward. But it still is very hard for people to come forward. People don't, it's a problem that is not talked about, is not talked about enough. And we need to be encouraging people to come forward, not shame people, and really create spaces where we are inviting the conversation. We are not just expecting somebody to have to like come out of their shell on their own, but we are actively addressing this, which is why it's part of our safety training, is bringing it up and actually opening the floor for that conversation and for taking action. So.
Last year, we had a speaker here from Women, helping people address assaults, and she's told us a very disturbing statistic that since the election in 2016, they've had a marked decrease in immigrant girls and women who come looking for help to them. And they think that that may be because they're afraid of being reported to ICE, that they're afraid of they're afraid to come and ask for services. And she said that that was almost like within the week. And I don't know if you're coordinating with Women Helping Women or not, but they would definitely be an ally for you to work with.
Yeah, we've actually partnered with them to do some trainings on workplace harassment in particular. You can always do more, but they're a wonderful partner in the community and a wonderful organization to support. I've actually used to volunteer with them and had a long relationship with them. So.
Yeah.
Martha gets the last word.
Martha gets the last word.
Well, I just wanted to ask Manuel, I'm a little confused by what you told us about your own past. May I ask you, one, did you feel, you were a principal of a school, you say, in Guatemala. Did you feel safe there and in that job? And now that you're here with a completely different work, do you feel safe here?
Honestly, I say safe. What is the reason? Is I know my rights, and when you know you have rights, it make you don't intimidate. I live my own life. Unfortunately, my own family is not here, but I try to live normal life, and it's something we share with the immigrant community. It's better not just sit and watch news what they say every day. It's prefer go and find a church, find a group, meet together. When something happen with you, people supporting you. But when you only watching TV, nobody knows you. And I give an example what happened. Is one of our member at the organization, he is in detention center. He and his family, they want to fight, and we fight together. And what we do is stop his deportation. And we learning many things about the process, and something make me think, and our organization think, is he have 5 courts, and he is in Butler County Detention Center, and the court is in Cleveland. But what we see over there is when you came, the reception is a room with empty chairs. There's nobody go over there. When you come into the court, you see the judge, person to translate, the in a big screen. And person who is detained is probably in Butler County with a lawyer when they have a lawyer. Is we know how important is bring people to the courts to fight, do they feel pressure. And what we do in the end, fortunately, is we stop his deportation. And of course, it's hard, but it's our day-by-day work with the community.
But how about your life in Guatemala? Would you come in on that? Did you feel safe there?
I want to connect 2 questions.
Doesn't want to answer.
Oh, we did something about the gangs down in Latin America. ¿Cómo se puede hacer para influenciar lo que está pasando con los gangs?
Oh, it's something I want to connect the 2 conversations. Unfortunately, is the difference within my life and here. I always in my life use the public transportation over there and here. But what I feel here is more secure. Is what I expect in my country is at the bus, and probably somebody stop and came with gun and asking for your property. Is what happened. But connecting with the gang, I born in the 70s. Before we don't have gangs. It's a problem this country create to our country. Is when they deport people from here. And later this big situation happened. It is honestly what happened. And of course now it's a big situation. Take too much resources from our governments, and it's corruption at the police departments and all these kind of things together. And of course connecting with the drugs too. It's a big problem. And it's who forced many people to leave the country. And something happened twice. Is I remind before I came to United States, is with my kid. He is 3 years old at the bus, and somebody stopped the bus to rob people. Who make me safe is my kid. But he see me with kid, and he don't rob me, but he robbed the other people. And the other time, I remind I'm moving from the house I live to school. I work in the neighborhood I growing up, and I moving in a skywalk, and I hear 2 shots somewhere. And when I see over there is somebody running, it's just killing someone over there. These kinds of things is
That's
happening.
what we need to hear. Can I just say that what is missing from our conversations? What is missing from our conversations in the news everywhere about immigration is we are not learning why people come here. And it is our doing, it is largely our doing, because we have supported the terrible rulers. Honduras can't even have an election. You know, they tried to elect a Democratic leader not long ago, and it was called a rigged election. They could not honor it. So now they still have the dictator. The business community that threw out the Democratic elected leader, 5 or 10 years ago, they had a wonderful leader. Well, business hated them, and we hated. We supported the business coup So that's what's missing from our conversation about immigration. People come here because of the frightening situation they have. They'll travel miles to get safe somewhere. Or they think that they will get safe. We've got to stop doing that. I mean, and there's a huge fund that has been started up where we help Central American countries with democratic elections and so on, but we're not giving to it.
Yeah, I'd also like to mention that something we should be talking about is decriminalization of drug usage. The gangs are fueled by illegal drugs, and if we change that, we probably reduce by 70 or 80% the reason that there are these gangs.
I just want to thank everybody for sharing, and I'm inspired by grassroots work. Sometimes it gets very depressing to see what the leadership in the country is doing, but at the grassroots level, there's some real courage, and people inspire us to show equal courage. So thank you for being here and sharing this.
I just want to share real quick, briefly to conclude, I think, and I thank you for your comment. We talk about frontline organizations sometimes, right, as like people who are boots on the ground, doing the work. And I think one of the things about the Workers Center that I treasure the most, and I've been here for a year now, and it's very, very important to my heart, this work as an immigrant as well. But the thing about the Workers Center that I really treasure is how it brings together the community from so many different places. And when I started speaking, I pointed out that none of this work would be possible without connecting with other organizations, with other people, with volunteers, with people who are generous with their time and with their money, and who are willing to engage in that process on this level, on this boots on the ground level, to where at our annual fundraiser at the May Day brunch that we do to celebrate International Workers' Day, we'll have people, the government official who works for the city and the Department of Inclusion to enforce the local wage ordinance is sitting like right across from the worker who doesn't speak English, who is part of making that complaint, who was out thousands of dollars from their employer who violated their rights. And they are sitting in the same space and they are breaking bread together. And that is really the beauty and the reach of this organization. And that's something that I just really wanted to share with you all to conclude, because this is really the heart of the work, is being together and walking together and doing that, moving forward and respecting the basic dignity and the basic capacity and potential of every single person to be empowered, to stand up for themselves, and to connect with other people in the community this way. Thank you so much for giving us the space to
Thank you, Magda. At the beginning, I was telling you I was losing hope. This has given me hope, so thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you. And now I can breathe a little bit better today. Next week is Jean Corwin, the Single Parent Network and Women's Health Issues. And for you guys out there, you've got wives, you've got daughters, you've got mothers. It's very important. Jean Corwin, she's going to be here with 2 other physicians talking about all the women's health issues and the Single Parent Health Network. All right, take care.